Oh, that's fine.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay, well, I will bring this policy or this finance committee meeting to order. Let's see. So first we'll go with approval of the meeting minutes for January 19th, 2021.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? They look good to me. Lots of detail. It's nice. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Well, thank you. All right. Next, we're going to talk about charter school update and where are we at with it? What have we spent? What's more? What's less? Nothing's less.
I put together a PowerPoint because it's easier to go through at least some of the numbers. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Let's see. Oh, wait. Are you seeing my finance committee's
Yes.
PowerPoint? Okay.
Yep, you're good.
All right, thank you. So let's go. Hold on. Charter school update. Charter school law originally passed in 1997. Now, remember the purpose of creating it was for flexibility to support innovation in partnership with public education. So that's how charter schools started. The state budget is considering, well, first there's two types of charter schools. There are brick and mortar, which is authorized by school districts where they're located. And there's also cyber, which is authorized by PDE. Both are public schools and they're both funded the same way by tuition paid by school district at the same rate. Now the state budget is considered charter school reform. Currently, tuition is based on the district's budgeted costs, which means it's different for all school districts. It creates significant variations. Today, it ranges from 9,170 to around 22,300 for regular education. So you can see there's a huge difference. Possible reform. Now remember, they've talked about reform many times, but I think it's become more serious now with a lot of things that's happened with COVID. The possible reform is to standardize the tuition rate at 9,500 for regular ed. Currently, ours is 13,426, and they're estimating a savings of $229 million. Now, special ed it's done differently by a percentage of your student population when they're calculating tuition rate for special education charters. The students who are in special ed in charter schools, they're talking about changing that and reforming it and basing the cost by applying Act 16. Now what Act 16 is, there's a breakdown of the cost of students. We have to report each year our special ed students by category. There's 4 categories, even though funding's based on 3 categories. So there's the first category, which is like your learning support. And so and that's where most of your students are. And then it gets to more significant costs of students on category 2, 3, and then 4 being the most expensive. And it's broken out by cost level. So what they're talking about for the reform is basing the cost that is paid to charter schools based on by applying Act 16. Most of the reason being most of the charter schools do not have the severely handicapped students, whereas school district must educate them or they're in a placement or so forth. So our charter school enrollment. So I was showing you from March of last year, which is when we closed down, or at least the districts were closed, from 110, and then it increased dramatically in July, August, and September, October. Now, you may say, so why March to July? At that time, there was a freeze. So even because school districts, everything was in flux. So school districts, charter schools could not add anyone to their rolls. Even if someone transferred there, they weren't allowed to add them as tuition students at that time. So as of March 13th, basically everything was status quo until the new year started in July. So that's why you're not seeing any, I'm not providing any numbers between that portion. And whether they accepted them or not was really up to the charter schools. So as you can see, our difference between cyber and brick and mortar charter school is vastly different. There wasn't a lot of change in the brick and mortar schools versus the cyber schools. More students entered in the cyber arena. The cost, as I said earlier, for our regular ed students is $13,426, and our special ed students is $28,336. And again, it's based on our budgeted costs. There is a formula. There's a form that we complete at 363 or 363. I think that's it. And it determines what our costs are. So you can
There's
see,
always a formula.
oh yeah, there always is a formula. So one of the things here is you can see when I did the budget, we weren't estimating this transition to charter schools that occurred. So I'm short in the budget by 1.4 million, at least at this point. Those numbers could change going forward. And of course it'll cause either more or less based on that. I wanted to show you, a question came up, I guess, during our last meeting. Sorry, I have all these different things. So regarding the cyber and brick and mortar, and you can see we have 4 brick and mortar charter schools that we have students enrolled at, and then the rest of them are the cyber charter schools. And you can see the difference in the cost. Out of the 1.8 million that we've paid so far, 1.5 million was paid to cyber charters, and they're the ones that are listed for Upper Perk. The historical enrollment, again, here's our brick and mortar and cyber charter. Now this is from 2015-16 to current day. And you can see we had a high in 15-16, 127. And then we did start our own program that the district had available, which I think some of the students then were using Ingenuity in the district's program for some time period. And then of course, COVID occurred and there was a shift of students going into cyber. I think it was just, some say it was a more comfort level because, they've been doing it for a long time. I guess there was a lot of different reasons, but that's what our current enrollment is. I wanted to show it graphically so you could see, like the brick and mortar, there wasn't a lot of change. I mean, it's been consistent. Pretty much it looks like it's up and down, but there's not many students that have come and gone out of the brick and mortar schools. A lot of times it's for religious reasons, for social reasons, or for a number, but it's pretty consistent. And it's usually the families, if they have someone in one of those schools, of course, any siblings normally would go to that school. And we transport to all the brick and mortar charter schools because they're within 10 miles of our school district. Cyber charter, you can see what has changed. So back in 15-16, like I said, that year was high, and then we had brought some back to our own program, and then all of a sudden the fluctuation to 2021. Now combining brick and mortar and cyber, and you can see the differences as we charted them. So, like again, the governor's looking at charter school reform to help bring those costs more in line with need. Having said that, when we go into basic ed, I can't say that's the same for school districts, though. Once these formulas are derived, there's reasons it was originally put in place, and then to change them becomes very difficult. Obviously, no one wants to lose funding. It's just that the variation for charter school being so drastic, from like 9,100 to 22,000 for a regular ed student, just because of the district that they're coming from, it's just not equitable. It's just not right. So they need to come up with a fairer formula, whether it's a consistent regular ed cost for $9,500 or some kind of adjustment made that's appropriate. Now, understanding, there's a lot of discussion where cyber schools, don't have the same cost that the brick and mortar schools do. For example, and all charter schools don't have the same cost that school districts do because we pay for the transportation. So there's some factors that we have as extra costs that are not costs for the charter schools. But again, like I said, brick and mortar do have a higher cost than, I would think, than cyber. moving forward, so on my on my outline, I have tax collection in between, but I'm going to go right into revenue and then put that as the third item, if that's okay.
Yep.
Okay, so revenue for the coming year. Obviously, we haven't determined the need on the expenditures yet. We're still working on some budget. This is a little more difficult year because of COVID. We are getting some COVID funds, but they're once and done funds. So you can't count on them for ongoing expenditures because once they're exhausted, that's it. You're not going to receive more additional revenue from those. So I did a 0 millage and I also did a 3.7, which is our max under Act 1 as we pass the opt-out resolution, which means we cannot go higher than the 3.7. If more funds are needed, we will use fund balance. And then, as you can see, I have their fund balance to be determined and total revenue and fund balance to be determined. Now, adding the 3.7, you can see there's the difference and what that revenue stream would bring. And we'll, oops, sorry, I didn't want to go that fast. So that would be my total revenue to support the expenditures at this point. There's still, we still have some questions, and I'll talk about those as we go on to break down the local, the state, and the federal funding. And just to put it in a graphic form, here's the graph. You can see this is the 0% and the 3.7, the little sliver being the additional amount if we raise it by the 3.7%. And then you can see here, again, 0.7 and 3.7 millage increase, just graphically showing how, the support of those funds, because 0 is the, well, because a lot of our revenue, a lot of our real estate funds are already in place. So that would be your blue. And then the additional 3.7 you can see is the orange. Let's see. Local revenue. So I broke down, as you know, it's very detailed in the local revenue. I wanted to show that to you so we can talk about a few of the areas. I'm showing here the 0% as far as a millage increase, what the current real estate would be. As I said, I also attached in your on the SharePoint a breakdown and calculations for the calculation for the real estate based on assessed value, market values, as it is as of it was Sunday. So the interim real estate, that's your the amount you receive on sale of property, or when there's a new building or an addition to a building, not the sale. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. But any change to real estate. So new parcel, new addition, new home. Then there'll be an interim bill issued for the difference in the assessed value on that property. Public utility realty tax is basically the same each year. It's based on the public utilities that are in your district, and you receive a portion from the state. And then payment in lieu of current taxes is just a small amount received for a small piece in the district. Per capita is the $10 tax that's assessed in July on all individuals 18 years and older. There's an exemption if they earn less than $10,000 that they can apply for and then submit to the tax collector. The reason you're seeing two lines here is because the $10 comes $5 under Section 679 of School Code and $5 under Act 511. Also, Act 511 allows us the earned income tax, which is a wage and income tax, Act 511. So that is 1% on wages that are on earnings or profits. That has increased. You're going to see an increase here drastically over last year. The reason was last year we reduced it because the prediction was because of COVID that we were going to see some significant decreases in that last quarter of the year. We really didn't see it because there's a lag. So we did bring in a lot more than estimated. We will bring in more than estimated this year versus when I reduced the budget, and we brought in more last year. So I use Berkheimer will do an estimate for us each year based on trends. And so I'm using the estimate based on the information that they have and the funds coming in. which is, like, again, significantly more than I put in the budget for the current year. Real estate transfer tax, well, as long as homes are selling, and they have been, as soon as they go on the market, there seems to be in demand, you're going to see a percentage that comes to the district for all sales transactions that occur. So that amount is pretty steady. It's not decreased or really increased, but it's consistent. Delinquent real estate, I have more than last year. We're pretty much on target. Last year we delayed sending out delinquencies because of COVID. We just waited till hopefully we thought things would get better. But then there was a timeline. I mean, they held it so they were sent to lien, but then the delinquent collector asked if they should hold their notices and time frame, giving people more time to pay, and we did that. So I think we'll be on track for next year for 21-22. Delinquent per capita, that's just based on historical numbers. Interest, sad to say, significant decrease. Pretty much the bottom fell out of interest earnings. We go back a couple years and you'll see that on the 5 years, a 5 year of information that we have on actual. Back about 5 years ago was about 100,000, and then it increased to 600,000 because interest started to go up. Well, they took a dive, which is good for everyone who's borrowing. That's a good thing. And it was good. We just did a bank loan. It was good for us because we received a reduced rate. But interest earnings on funds is down. Maybe that will go up. By the time we actually get into the final budget, I may be increasing this based on information we have, but right now it's pretty bleak picture on earnings for the investments.
Now, can I stop you for a second?
Sure.
So that interest, that is on that's on what's collected?
So in all the funds that we receive, our state funds, our collected funds for real estate, you're correct. Our earned income, everything that comes in is invested, but the bank interest rates are really, really low. I predict I'm going to have it higher than that, but it's not going to be at the level it's been for the last couple of years.
Okay, and that's just like interest in the bank. That's basically bank interest.
Correct.
Okay, it doesn't get invested anywhere other than normal, like anywhere.
Right. We have CDs and we have investments, but that's it. I mean, we have some restrictions on what we can invest in.
Okay. Thank you.
Invest in the stock market. Sorry. No,
Yeah. I don't think I want you to.
The end of January. So far this year, we're at 35,000. So just to give you a picture of where we are currently. Special functions, again, with COVID, we're seeing less revenue because we're not having those functions. So we support some functions like Blue and Gold and so forth. We get some contributions towards some of those functions, but we're not having functions at this point, or at least we're trying. We'll see what happens, but I can't predict what that's going to be in 21-22 at this time. So that may change a little, but I don't see it changing drastically. Student activity admissions. Again, this is way down because we didn't really have anyone at football games. We're restricted on all our indoor facilities as far as how many spectators are allowed. So that's drastically redoing our student activity admissions. Fees. Oh, I'm sorry.
Can I just ask a quick question on those two? What was historically our contributions on those?
Okay, so
just off the top of your head, I mean, are we down like 50%, 75%?
well, we are down significantly, but wait, I'll pull out one. Hold on. In the I apologize. My problem is I have too many papers loading.
If you want to get back to us on that, that's
I
fine.
will. Well, I'll get to that because actually there's some slides in there too. So, wait, I have it right here. So for our 6630, hold on. We're ranging around. Well, we don't get much in special functions. So in 1819 we had 4,400, but in 1920 we only had 400. But remember, the activities occur from, near the end of the school year. So that's why you didn't see very much in 1920. So I'm hoping something picks up for the end of this year, that we'll receive a little bit in that area. But again, I don't think we're going to see more than 1,500 next year unless we're back to normal. We can hope for that.
Yeah.
Now, the big one is student activity admissions. Even for 1920, even with not having the last couple months, we were at $44,000. Track record was averaging around 30, maybe 35,000. You'll laugh. A lot of it depends on how many home football games we have, because that's our big revenue stream for those kind of activities. See, moving on. So we have our IDA funds, which is a number that, fees, there's not much in, fees is another discussion that we're having currently. They were ranging, I don't know if you remember, we talked about this maybe during budget last year, because we have fees for parking fees at high school and technology fees for middle and high school level, because they were the individuals that had either Chromebooks or computers. This year, we said we weren't charging any fees because everyone needed to have a Chromebook or computer. So the district wasn't charging anything for those devices. Now there's a question moving forward on what that's going to look like. And that decision has yet to be made. So I put $1,000 in there because there are, for example, if we do have parking for the high school, so there will be some fees coming in there, but not at the same level if we're not charging for technology. Then federal IDEA funds is a pass-through funds. They tell us what we're getting, and then we appropriately use that for those funds. The rest of local, so we have rentals, which I have down also. Now remember, this helps support our turf fields. Our range is anywhere around 38,000 to 18-19. We're at 52,000. So our turf fields get requested often, because our district, not many districts charge for use of their facilities or gyms or even fields in some cases. We do not. We do not charge unless it's an outside group not associated with the district, except for our turf fields. We do charge for that, and anything special. We have had individuals using our auditorium for dance recital. We would charge for that. But a lot of it's not charged as long as we have a custodian on duty. And but that is significant. I'm thinking we're going to be back at some point in 21, 22, renting some of our facilities, or at least our turf fields, but I don't know when that'll be. Again, as the year gets closer to, passing a final budget or even the preliminary budget, we'll see if things change in this COVID world. Contributions and donations. We will receive this year $17,500 from St. Luke's. So when we agreed to our training agreement that we have with them, they provide trainers at a very, very low cost. They actually pay us more than we pay them a lot for the first 2 years. They had decided they would donate $17,500, but that was for the first 2 years of 5 years. They also donate a little bit towards the foundation, and they also donate some funds towards supplies, like $2,500, another $1,500. So we get now, like I said, part of that's for the foundation, so you're not going to see that in here. I will adjust this though slightly because I know they donate, well, either buy supplies or donate to us for supplies. So we'll see where that comes in, whether it shows up here or just they're going to offset some of our supplies that we need for our athletes. Summer school tuition. We do have a summer school program that there is a small charge. We may be expanding that this year, but it hasn't yet been determined if there's a cost or what that cost would be and what that looks like. And remember, we have some supporting funds and some requirements because of COVID, and we feel like some additional services we need to provide to students, and that's yet to be determined. So we'll see, that could change slightly. Transportation services provide other PALEAs. We charge our Western Center to transport students to the Western Center. Now, having said that, they also claim that for reimbursement to the state. So actually talked to the auditor today because I said, now we're doing this, their costs are going to be quite increased this year. And she says, well, then their subsidy will be increased also. So, they will receive additional subsidy. Remember, this year, while we were in virtual, students were attending the Western Center and we were transporting them from home, which we've never done before. So that transportation service was just provided for the purpose of getting those kids to the Western Center. And then there's always miscellaneous revenue of sorts. There's truancy fines and other things that are under 6990 and the 6999. Now the energy efficiency revenue and incentives, that is, remember we just passed the ENERNOC type where we reduce our energy usage, and then there's funds that come back to the district for doing that. So that's reflected in this number. So our total revenue from local, it matches the number, I hope, on the front under the 0 for millage increase. And then here I added 3.7%, allows an increase of additional $1.4 million to support the budget in the local area. All right. So here are millage calculations. I know, again, the backup documentation, you can find some on the SharePoint. Whoops, sorry, didn't mean to go there. The if there's a 0 increase, I'm just reflecting what the increase would be on the median taxes for an individual in each of the counties. And you can see if it's 1%, 2%, 3%, and 3.7%. So depending on what the millage rate increase recommendation will be when we explore the full budget, you can see what the effect will be on the individuals in the district. State revenue. So I will say, I have information on this, but I'll go through these areas first. So the basic instructional subsidy, I'm basically budgeting what we're receiving in 2021, and I will go into that a little more detail as we go on. Basic ed subsidy for Social Security, that's based on what we receive based on our salaries. So we pay into Social Security, we receive funds from the state to support half of our contribution into Social Security. Tuition for orphans and children in private schools. This is our section 1305 students. So our foster placements, foster students that are placed in our school district. This had varied over the last couple of years. We have a significant number of foster students. So it could reach higher, but I have to be honest, it's tough because they could be in and out of the district. We had basically 2 students who, although we're still educating them, they've been placed out of the district and are in a different category at this point. So of course that's going to affect our what we receive from the state. But again, this is a moving target based on, and it's great that families, accept foster students, and we do receive additional reimbursement for them because they're not students that actually would reside in our district otherwise. Special education, again, I'm going to go into that a little bit further along also. This is greater than last year. The prediction, I only budgeted half of what the state is estimating that we will receive, and I'll go into that a little bit later. Public transportation subsidy. We're going to look at this a little closer. This is based on what we're receiving and the estimate possibly for 2021. But remember, we didn't provide the same level of transportation in 2021 for revenue received in 21-22. There is a mechanism that we just recently received information that if we pay the contractor at a certain level, less fixed cost, less variable costs, there's a calculation. If we pay them a certain dollar amount, then we could claim the same, we can receive the same subsidy as we're receiving in 2021. What we need to do is evaluate whether that's in the best interest of the district or not. Do we pay the additional cost this year to cover the subsidy that we will receive this year, or do we not and accept the subsidy that calculates by what we submit? What we submit is, the year of the vehicle, number of students with and number of miles with and without students. So there's a number of variables that go into the calculation when calculating transportation subsidy. Obviously, if your bus, it wants the maximum number of students on the vehicle. Right now, those vehicles are way less than half full because we're in hybrid and because more people are transporting their students instead of using the transportation services. All right. Non-public and charter school transportation subsidy. So we receive there's a different calculation for the transportation we provide for non-public and charter school students. So they separated that into a different funding source. So it's additional funds, recognizing that those are more costly. For example, we transported all the non-publics and charter school students from the beginning of the year. 2/3 of our fleet was actually in operation because of those many different sites for those schools. So we were transporting during that time, recognizing that is a much higher cost. There is some additional subsidy. It doesn't cover it all, but at least it's a consideration and a help towards providing those services. Rental and sinking fund payments. I have another sheet I'll show you on how that is calculated. That's our PlanCon funds that based on our borrowings, our projects were PlanCon eligible, so there is a percentage that we receive for those rental payments. Medical and dental, that's based on a formula, again, formulas on the nurses that provide services to our students, and dental services that are provided based on an ADM cost per student. State property tax reduction, I just put the same number as currently this year. There was a scare last year because they didn't allocate the funds to support this. I'm assuming they're going to allocate it next year. I haven't heard that they're not. It comes from gambling funds. It is an amount that the state identifies at a certain point in time and then notifies its school district. It changes very little, but those funds are in lieu of revenue that we receive from real estate. It offsets tax bills that individuals are given.
Is this, can I ask you a quick question? Is that the homestead?
Yes.
Okay.
Homestead and farmstead.
All right. So so when somebody applies for the homestead and they get the reduction in taxes, the state picks up part of that?
Right. Well, what happens is we're notified by each county of our homestead and farmstead parcels. The state only gives us a fixed dollar amount, and then we have to spread it among all those who qualify. So if we had, let's say, 100 more qualify, the number doesn't change. That just means everyone gets less of a credit.
That doesn't seem right.
I know. Believe me, I'll go down that path for you with you.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Ready Learn grant is, we were using it to support full day K in the past. That's not the way it's being used this year. We're using it differently to support students in the early grades with extra supports because of being in the COVID realm. I'm not sure what we'll be doing next year with it, but it's been a fixed dollar amount to support those programs. And retirement is also a number that's based on what we pay in, and we get reimbursement back. 50% of the reimbursement comes back that we pay in on the salaries to everyone in the district. So that's our revenue.
Is that the 34%? Oh, no, that's the
Right,
PZ.
well, it's half of that, right? We receive half of that percentage, yes.
Okay, thanks.
So half of that comes back. We have to budget the full amount because that's a cost to the district. But then on the flip side, we receive reimbursement on that. Now, basic ed proposal. As I said to you, I did not raise our basic ed funding estimate for budget for next year, at least at this point. The budget hasn't passed. So the governor has proposed pushing 100% of the existing basic ed to flow through a fair funding formula. So what that means is currently our funding is based on like the 1990s funding that was occurred and the formula back then. And then at that point, after that, you were held harmless. But additional funds are go through in recent years through this fair funding formula. It says here currently only 11% of the existing basic ed flow through the fair funding formula. The governor was proposing 100% of the existing funds, and the reason the existing is important because altogether there's like $8 billion. All right, so the existing is 6.255 billion, and if he put 100% through the fair funding formula, districts like Upper Perk would receive a significant reduction in their basic ed subsidy. About 136, somewhere around there, districts would lose money and the other districts would gain. And we're one of them. So then he, recognizing that he can't do that, well, he wouldn't do that because it would be a significant loss to district. Like for us, it's over $2 million. He's proposing another 1.15 billion to prevent a negative funding. So that would bring all those who would possibly lose funds under the fair funding formula and bring them even. In addition, he has placed another $200 million for an increase, but funding it through the fair funding formula. If that occurs, we would receive another $200,000. But these are all ifs. To accomplish these initiatives, and there's other initiatives also to support this, he would raise the PIT from 3.07 to 4.49. As people have said, that's a dead deal. That won't happen. There's no way that he will have, that they'll pass a budget raising the PIT tax of 4.49 to support education. I mean, in this, it doesn't just support basic ed. It supports special ed, additional PlanCon money. I think there's 190 million in PlanCon, additional money in transportation, additional money for PSERS, raising the minimum teacher salary to $45,000, which would not affect our school district. Looking at raising minimum wage to $12 as of July of this year and $15 in July of 2027. So there's something on my roof. No, there's a number of items that is being supported by this increase in the PIT. So again, that is why I did not increase our basic ed funding, because I don't think that, obviously that level is not going to occur. And if we just hold our own, that would be good, considering that everything wouldn't be, that original amount wouldn't be flowing through the fair funding formula. Special ed proposal, the state budget includes 1.4 billion. So we receive an amount equal to our 13-14 special ed allocation. Again, all these go back to a number of years where you receive at least that level. And then a prorated share is going by adjusted weighted special ed student count multiplied by my market value personal income aid ratio and equalized multiplier. Now, what does that mean by the special ed student count? Students, as I said a little bit earlier, special ed students are in several categories. And so when your subsidy is calculated, it is based on those categories. Now, I budgeted half, and that's pending that there is an additional in state funding for special education. Also, the numbers that drive out that calculation aren't certified at this point. So what I did is I looked at the numbers that they have listed and the numbers that we reported on our Act 16 report, and there's a little bit of a deviation. So I didn't want to budget the entire amount that they're estimating if the state budget passes with the additional funds. So, but I did increase it. I didn't keep it the same. Going back to the PlanCon or rental reimbursements, I wanted to show you the calculation. This is updated to account for our 2021 bank loan issue, because remember that was a combination of our 2013 and our 2016 bond issue. You'll see the first line where the 2016 is listed because next year I have one small payment before that before that goes to zero. So there is a small reimbursement there. And then the 2013 combination, 2016 combination is a different percentage because it's somewhere in between. The estimated calculation is 0.397. We will get that officially from the state, but that'll take some time. That I won't receive that until after the borrowing, probably sometime into next year. So this is an estimate based on what we receive from our financial advisor and from bond counsel.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
So if we got the reimbursement at 0.397 for a bank loan, and look how small the reimbursements are for the other ones, would it behoove us to try to change any of them to bank loans, or can't we do that?
You can't do, it's not relative to the issue, it's what the issue was for. So they determine a percentage based on what that borrowing included. And what, so you go through the PlanCon process, A through G, and then you get to G and you list what those costs are, what it's supporting, what it's replacing, and they determine a percentage allocation that qualifies for the reimbursement. So
Okay.
yeah, it doesn't matter where you borrow the money, it's just what it's qualified for the reimbursement.
Gotcha.
The reason the Western Center, vote techs are always at 0.5. Even though our aid ratio is lower than that, their reimbursable percentage is 0.5 to be consistent for all the districts. Since vote techs are a combination of several districts, they just use 0.5.
How much more time is on that Western Center? Is that a 20-year?
I'm trying to think how many years
2008?
are left. I don't know if it's 20 or 25.
Okay, I was just curious.
But remember, it was refinanced.
I think it was
So-
25.
Yeah, but I don't remember the original year of the borrowing.
Yeah, I think the year for the original borrowing was before that.
It's like
Okay,
2000,
don't-
I think, because the Western Center was in, their borrowing can only be refunded after 8 years. So if it was refunded, if my year's right, which I'm not sure it is, that might be the original year. That might be the original year. That might not be the year refunding, because it wasn't that long ago that we refunded. I know it'd be a long time. So that might be the original year of the borrowing.
All right, thank you.
Mhm. Federal funds. This is a guess at this point based on our current level of federal funding. For Title I, II, and for Title III, we allocate that. We do that through the intermediate unit. The big one is the ESSER II funds. Okay, so we're working, that budget for those funds has yet to be completed. So the estimate is just a ballpark number of what I think will be spent in 21, 22 once we complete the budget and submit that for the ESSER IIs. Then I'll have a better idea of what that level of reimbursement will be. We have until 2023 to spend the funds. So I don't want to put it all on the 21, 22 school year. Because some of it will probably carry over, because you have to remember, these funds are once and done. Unless they, of course, they're going to give us more COVID funds, but it's not an ongoing revenue source. So we have to be careful how we spend it and what we spend it on. Medical assistance is our access funds that we spend funds, apply for funds, and then we receive funds based on the services that are provided. It's PT, OT, those kinds of services. And then there's some staffing. And so we are able to acquire funds, but we're spending them and then we receive some of those funds back. And then there's a medical assistance claiming amount that is a small nominal amount we receive for filing for medical assistance claims. Now, 5 years of actual revenues, again, historical information. I just provide this as an overview for the major function areas, local, state, federal, and other. There's much more detail provided in the source document that you have access to on your SharePoint. I use a lot of that data for projecting forward, which, that helps. Of course, when you're dealing with an unusual year, it makes it a little bit more difficult and not knowing when we'll be back to normal. But we can hope for 21, 22. And then 5 years of actual revenue just shown in graphical bar, in a bar graph. You can see the state and the local sources and federal sources and other. That is it for revenue. Again, these are all estimates at this point. I mean, some of them should be fairly accurate, but we'll keep updating them as we go on. If there's more information comes available. The issue with state funding is difficult right now. I mean, he was aggressive in wanting to make some changes. We've talked about, again, charter school reform for a long time. I don't know if that will occur. And if our charter school enrollment continues to grow, I think it probably will hold its own, or hopefully students will start to come back once we're, 5 days in. That's a possibility, or at least the beginning of next year, they'll come back to the district.
Yeah, let's hope so.
I surely hope so.
Yeah.
I know that was kind of brief. Is there any questions that I can answer? And then if you, again, have any questions on the documents that you can access, just send me an email, both to Dan and I. We just love this stuff, so.
Yep.
Parts and numbers.
No, I
Okay,
feel a lot more comfortable with it these days than in the first year. So the first budget. So no, this is much better. I appreciate this. This really makes it pretty clear.
thank you. There's a lot of information that goes into trying to get to the numbers. Again, like I said, this is an unusual time at this point. And I really don't think the governor's budget has a chance for raising the PIT. Let's see what happens moving forward and where they can allocate funds. If we can at least hold to our current level, I won't be disappointed, but I would love to see some increases. Now, the other item on the agenda is regarding tax collection. We talked a little bit about this previously, and now that we have passed the tax collectors rules and regulations and compensation, as I said to you just prior to that meeting, the tax collectors expressed an interest not to collect the per capita tax. Again, its nickname is a nuisance tax, and to them it's a nuisance. So I started right after that meeting investigating the possibility of, could we do it in the district? Or at least use a third party to collect it to relieve them of that obligation. I was able to get a quote that actually would save funds for the school district. It'd be a lower cost all the way around. Even in what I'm looking for in software, I would only need to go to real estate software, not per capita. There is one entity that still wants to collect the per capita, which is fine. I did talk to the third-party vendor that I'm looking at, and they could accommodate that. So that's great. It would make everyone happy, I think. So my next step, and I have them ready, I just didn't send them out because I was waiting for Kyle to confirm with Kyle that we're good to go. Deputization paperwork for the tax collectors to sign off to the district. At that point, I would contact the municipality because remember the municipal tax for the per capita is on our bill. And it was odd that when I was talking to Third, they said, "Do you want us to bill the municipality?" I said, "I've never done that. We've assumed the entire cost, so it wouldn't be something I would add to the municipality. It would be again, paid by the district." Now, what reason I would need to contact them is because they would hopefully do something similar with their tax collector because their tax collector would not be collecting the per capita, so they wouldn't need to compensate them for collecting it. Which would save them a little bit of money. I don't know what they pay. I know one of them told me they receive 5%, which is what, 25 cents, I guess, per bill. So I'm not sure what the others pay. One of them, Marlborough Township, does not have the per capita tax, but the others do. So the reason, once I have the forms ready, I will send them out to the to the tax collectors. I'll be happy to send you a copy of one of them so you can see what it looks like. Once they sign off, then the board would take action on another resolution allowing us to collect that tax or to be the advocate to collect that tax. So moving forward on this, it's different. And I would not even pursued it if it wasn't the wish of the tax collectors. I mean, Dan was on that Zoom also, so we were surprised. But if that helps them and moving forward and that's their preference, that works for us also. It could be good for all of us. And it could be a little bit of a cost savings to the district. Any questions?
Would we need anything else to do that for ourselves? Or you said it's a third party. Never mind. That answered my own question.
Right. Well, we'd have to hire them. I mean, we'd have to board motion to utilize them as the collector. But it would all fit very well with our delinquent collection. And I'm hoping, we've had some issues with our software in the last several years with individuals that were taken off or now on again. And we haven't been able to understand how that could happen, even tracing back history. So I'm looking for it for another reason. Actually, I might not even pursued it if I didn't know we were having difficulties, but to go with a consistent, someone who can keep a consistent file. We would still support that third-party vendor because we get changes on tax notice, that the information we receive from the county each month, registration information regarding people moving in the district. So we would supply all that data to update that per capita listing, which we do it now, but I would feel more comfortable and that they have access also to state returns and stuff like that, that we could pick up individuals. So I think it'll be a better system than we currently have.
Good.
How long of a contract are you looking for? Like, are we going to do a short contract just to make sure it works first, or?
Right. So the way the tax collection resolution was passed is it goes every 4 years. So I'm looking for the first being a 1 year because our tax collectors only have 1 more year that they're obligated to collect taxes under their current elected status. And then they'll run again in the primary and the election being obviously, later in the year. At that point, I would ask those collectors that are successful for 4 years. I think it's going to work. I mean, I did some, background checking on this. I mean, I would like to do it continuously, but it'll have to be also in cooperation with the tax collectors that will be elected in November.
I see. So every time we get a new tax collector, theoretically, they could say, well, I want to collect that because I want the month, I want the quarter for each one.
Well, yeah, we pay quite a bit more than that. But I did also check that out with a third-party vendor because I have one tax collector that wants to collect it, and they can make that work. They will issue the bills in their name, and they can still collect the tax and remit it appropriately. So it can work even with going to a third party.
Good, good. good.
Yep.
Anything that saves us money, I'm all for.
Yep.
I'm trying. I'm trying.
Anybody else? Keith, have any questions? No? Okay.
You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, we did good. Wow.
Well, if you
Yeah.
really want us to use them up, Sandy.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
No, actually, you and Dan do a great job preparing everything for us. You know, all the information is extremely useful, and we are thankful for that. I know I am. And the way you've put it together and presented it to us by the different budget categories and everything, you know, it does make sense. I was amazed at the difference in revenue for like the student activities. You know, it was you said 44,000 in 1 year, and now we're down to 10K for the student activity fees. Yeah, and that's just a big indication of how badly we've been affected by this pandemic in the past year. And that was only the last half of last year. So it's crazy, but thank you.
no, it is. I agree. It is. And if things are changing for next year, you know, we can make those adjustments. But, you know, it's a year now and we're looking at vaccines not, you know, everyone not being able to be vaccinated until much later at the start of next year. So
I'd rather us
we'll see.
be underestimating our revenues and overestimating our expenditures, and then hopefully something good will come in between.
Let's hope so.
Anyone have anything else? I would probably thank everyone for those lovely presentations and ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion. Oh,
Judy made that motion. I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
aye.
Okay. Well, thank you guys very much. And our next one then would be, are we having any interim ones? I should have asked that before I adjourned us.
We haven't set them yet. I meet with Alan tomorrow. We're still gathering a lot of information for next year's budget. It's quite a different year with all the additional costs that we have for nursing services and aides and the computers. And yeah, fortunately we did receive some funding, but you know, going forward, looking to what those costs are going to be and full day K is another, you know, question about affordability. So we will let you know though. I mean, we'll structure it and get back to you on additional times.
Okay. All right.
So I know that next week, curriculum and instruction and special ed, we're going to be combining our meetings, and one of the topics is going to be full day K. When as are we as the finance committee going to look at the financial implications of full day K? When can we see some numbers on that, do you think?
I need to have it by the next meeting, and I intend to be participating in your meeting because I need to hear as well as what's being presented, and I want to hear a discussion how the board is, you know, feels towards movement towards the full day K program. In the meantime, I have some information from Mrs. Bass on the cost of additional employees that will be needed. And then, as you probably know, Dr. Farina's been gathering we don't have the cost yet, but what's needed for furniture. So we're looking at those kinds of needs, and I hope to put something together very shortly on that because it's important for that decision to be made.
We have it on our facilities meeting on Thursday. We have, it's on our agenda.
Right.
And I'm hoping that we'll have a little bit more for cost wise.
Because it's hard to make a determination. It's kind of like which comes first, the chicken or the egg. It's kind of hard to determine whether or not we can do full day kindergarten next year without knowing how much it costs. But we also can't know how much it costs unless we know for sure we're like, you know, what all we need. And, you know, so I was just kind of wondering where we were on that. So that sounds good. I'll see you next week at our meeting, it sounds like.
Oh.
Yep.
I'll be at facilities and I'll be at that meeting. So
Yeah.
See, and you thought
Put it
you
all
could
together.
retire and move off into the sunset. We're gonna work you to death until then.
That's fine.
Bye.
No problem.
All right, well, thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye.
See ya.
Thank you.